Yeah. Okay. Welcome everyone to this agroforestry session. So wonderful to see so many familiar faces from the World Food Forum. That's where many of us met for the very first time, and over a lunch conversation, we had the idea of this side event, and here we are today. So it's really great to see how these youth capacity building conferences build to these new relationships. This panel has brought together several youth organizations working at the landscape level. This includes the International Forestry Students Association, IAS, and YPARD, as well as a friend we've made with the youth, your organization? Here about climate. So today, at today's panel, we'll be discussing the role of youth in advancing agroforestry innovation within the context of climate resilience. On our panel, we have speakers from ISA, YPART, IS, and Youth for Climate, providing interdisciplinary youth perspectives from around the world. In my own work experiences, coming from a background as a forestry student, then working on agricultural climate programming and agricultural climate extension with the integration of climate, I've just been really impressed by all the opportunities agroforestry presents for the integration of agroecology into the production of food and fiber. Agroforestry as a nature-based climate solution has so many climate benefits, both in the dimensions of adaptation and mitigation, as well as their co-benefits across biodiversity and water and soil. So to open up, we'll have everyone on our panel introduce themselves, their organization, and where they're from.
Hi, everyone. My name is Violet Lowe Baynard. I am currently a master's student at the Yale School of the Environment, also a member of IFSA, the International Forestry Students Association, and I'm originally from New York City.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Matthew Azurawene. I'm from Ghana, and I'm a volunteer with the Kawa Climate.
Hello, everyone. I'm Isabel de la Paz. I recently graduated from the University of the Philippines, Los Baños. I'm the current president of the International Forestry Students Association, and now I work as a communications associate at C4 ICRA Philippines.
Everyone, I'm Thomas. I'm also recently graduated from Wageningen University, currently working for Wetlands International, and I'm the former president of EIS.
Hi, everyone. My name is Xiaoshan Deng, and I'm from China. Currently, I'm still a senior student majoring in agricultural economics at Northeast Agricultural University. And I'm also part-time research assistant at Chinese Academy of Agricultural Sciences and University College London. Yeah, I'm from YPART and originally from China.
Okay, and as the moderator, I'm from the Yale School of Environment, member of the International Forestry Student Association. Maybe starting with Thomas, but we'll go through our panel. Maybe spend about 5 minutes providing a high-level overview of your agroforestry projects and research.
Yes, for that I brought something, because my research into agroforestry in the Netherlands, and that is a new topic. Yeah, we know many examples, mainly in tropical countries, of agroforestry. It has not really been taken off in the Netherlands. And there was a pioneer, his name is Wouter van Eck, and he started his own agroforestry. And here I can pass it a bit around. You see an aerial view of a typical Dutch agricultural landscape. Grass to feed cows, to produce maize, are one of the biggest producing countries of Europe. And next to it, he built his agroforestry, where he built a system which grows walnuts, which grows all kind of berries, a system with several layers, a true agroforest, a true pioneer too. But he faces quite some challenges. And one of the challenges is to get finance, because in the Netherlands, a large part of our agriculture gets money from the European Union via subsidies. So that is one of the challenges he faces, but he thought, let's try to grow as specific and exotic crops as possible. So he's, for example, collaborating with a farm, with a brewery, and he is brewing special beers with parts of his agroforest, and he works together with restaurant in Nijmegen, a big city close by, which is one of the most famous restaurants of the country, has won several prizes, and they serve the food from the agroforest, so he could still make it a viable idea. And currently in the Netherlands, they're trying to scale up this idea. And one of the ideas they have is through education. So I'm good friends with somebody who started an idea to create a course around agroforestry at the University of Amsterdam, and it won that selection. So there is now a course in agroforestry at the University of Amsterdam, and it came out yesterday. There was plans at the University of Amsterdam to build a new road, but that got all cancelled. So there was more space at the university campus, and they decided now build an agroforestry project at the campus of the university. And I think that has a lot of benefits. I did research in several seasons, and I found that in a couple of years' time, 3 years' time, the organic matter was doubled in the soil. So they're a really great project. So it's this around to the audience so you can have a look and see some pictures the National Geographic made of this project in the Netherlands. I think a great example of how in the temperate regions also these kind of projects can work. Thank you.
We're moving now to Isabel.
Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, I am a recent graduate from the University of the Philippines, Los Baños, under the forestry program, but I specialized in urban forestry, which is funny because you don't necessarily see agroforestry systems in urban spaces. But because of that specific observation, I wanted to see if implementing agroforestry systems in urban spaces could actually work because it is practiced in other countries like the US and some countries in Africa, but not yet in Asia. So for my undergraduate study, I focused on the financial benefit cost analysis and farmers' adoption decision for urban agroforestry systems in my hometown, which is Santa Rosa City, Philippines. And I surveyed 70 farmers from different barangays or towns, as we call it in the Philippines, to see how profitable their current farming systems are, which is mostly rice and corn. And I found that they actually don't earn anything, but they owe more than they earn. So they are willing to adopt agroforestry systems, primarily fruit tree based agroforestry systems, but they don't have the financial and technical resources to actually um, implement these systems. So, what they need is support from the government for technical resources. This can be the inputs that they need, and also from the private sector to actually fund the financial resources that they need. And now I work in the Sustainable Farming in Tropical Asian Landscapes project, or SFITL project, under C4 ICRA Philippines as the communication associate. So the SFITL project focuses on the sustainable production of cacao in the Philippines and oil palm in Indonesia. But for this session, I'll just only highlight the project that we're doing in the Philippines. So our sites are in Davao de Oro, which is the Philippines' biggest producer of cacao. So we aid the farmers from the production of cacao up until the processing of their products. And the project is actually funded by the International Fund for Agricultural Development, and we partner with companies such as Mars Chocolate. You may have heard of it. So that we connect farmers to companies so that they can use their cacao or chocolate products. So that is all for my experience in agroforestry.
And Matthew, some stories from the ground.
Okay, thank you very much for this opportunity. My name is Matthew Azurawene. I was born in the northern part of Ghana, and currently our lives and our livelihood has been threatened by the Savannah Desert, eating up into the land of my birth. What do I mean by this? The impact of climate change has become so intense that agriculture is no more sustainable. And the issue of food security is worsening day in, day out. As a result of that, I became a climate migrant. My family, myself, we had to travel or migrate from our place to the southern part of Ghana, which is a bit better. And so in the southern part of Ghana, we were involved in agriculture. We had to till the land at a younger age. I was farming with my parents and then going to the farm and all that. And so we had to do that just to be able to make a living for ourselves. We couldn't do anything but just to be able to make a living for ourselves. Throughout that, I went to the university. And so even in the university, I almost dropped out because farming wasn't sustainable anymore because of the impact of climate change and the change in weather and the seasons, the cocoa that we used to grow, the amount of yield we used to have, it wasn't sustainable again. And so I had to stop school along the line and go and hustle and come back to school myself. And so as a result of that, I began thinking what can be done about this. It's not only my family, it's a whole lot of about 5 regions, and the people are living in a very abject poverty. Farmers make up about 60% of Ghana's population when it comes to agriculture and all that. And so we depend a lot on agriculture, for either crops, shoe, and then cocoa and all that. And then majority of the farmers are also into small farming activities, and that is what feed a lot of us in the communities and the country as a whole. And so the issue of agroecology or agroforestry has become very crucial because when we do our farming, it's such that we had to, before we start a farming season, we had to cut down, bring down the whole forest before we be able to do the farming. Bring down the trees, we burn everything. So when we are growing the food crops, we grow them on a bare land, no trees, nothing is there. And so that has become the trend in my part of the country. And so right now we are looking at ways we'll be able to inculcate all these things. We'll be able to improve agroforestry, whilst also growing our food crops and then our cocoa as well. But the cocoa, once you grow the cocoa from year 1 to year 3, you cannot grow any other tree again, any other food crop or any other thing on that land. It's left with cocoa. So if you have about 10 acres of cocoa, you have an additional land for food crops. It means that you're not going to have any plot or any plot of land food crops for your survival. And so that has become the challenge. I'm looking forward to our students and our researchers here that will be able to help us and even collaborate with those from the global south, especially my poor family, the farmers, will be able to not only sustain our livelihood, but also make a living to let our children go to school. Thank you so much.
And Violet.
Yeah. So I have been involved in several different agroforestry projects while being a master's student, but my thesis specifically is focused on silvopasture in Rwanda. And so silvopasture is the idea of integrating trees alongside agricultural systems or livestock. And so I spent the summer, 3 months in Rwanda working with the Wildlife Conservation Society. They have just received a Green Climate Fund grant to go along the entirety of the now Congo Divide. This grant was pretty large and had many different activities. However, the silvopasture was one small part that was supposed to be implemented in the dairy region of Rwanda. This region, which is near a national park called Chwati, and also is called Bigogwe, which is a bit north of it, has been almost entirely deforested. It used to be a large forested area. Chwati, which is now a nationally protected and recognized forest, used to cover that entire area. Due to a long history, including a World Bank project that ended up cutting down a large swath of it, it's now pretty barren. And so the way Rwanda currently has a lot of their milk production is through these like rolling hills of just purely grass. And what they're seeing right now is due to climate change, there's really large drought and then periods of heavy rain. They're seeing high areas of erosion, areas of flooding, and there's been some deaths already due to the flooding, and then a really big decrease in production, a decrease in production of forage for the cattle as well. And so what my project was doing is that they were going to be already designing this project for farmers, but had no intention as of yet of actually like listening to farmer voices. And so I spent the summer interviewing over 50 plus farmers, around 38 hours of interviews, to try to get farmer voices included in the design of the silvopasture project. And so often what happens with these projects around the world is that the people who work in offices, maybe in DC or just in the capital of the city, decide what these projects are going to take place. They come in with agroforestry projects. They'll say, like, okay, this is a tree that we like because it's the most climate resilient, and we're going to plant it in these types of rows because it's the most economical, which may be true, may be the most climate resilient, the most economical. However, it's not what trees farmers want. It's not how the farmers want them planted. And so they end up, these projects spend millions of dollars, and then they come back in 10 years' time and the trees have been cut down for firewood and nothing can remain with the project. And so I was interviewing farmers to basically ask them not only like, what type of trees do you like? How do you like them planted? Also, like, what are their larger issues? Because you can't just take a project, tiny aspect, like tiny realm of life of farmers. And so, like, what were their other issues with field management? And one of my main findings was basically that like water was really the main thing that farmers are worried about. And while they were excited about planting trees, a lot of their parents had planted trees, and a lot of the older farmers understood the importance of trees on pasture. Really, water was the main concern. And so when you're designing a project and you can be so focused on tree planting, and you forget about the larger ecosystem that you need to put in place silvopasture, they can fail quite quickly. And so the project is going to be designed in a few years, and we're hoping that my findings and the words of focus will be incorporated into them.
Thank you so much for sharing your work and experiences. We're going to now transition to the panel discussion. Our first question is for our representative, Sean from YPARD and Bella from the International Forestry Student Association. As youth working in agroforestry and agroforestry adjacent areas, can you tell us what you think are the unique traits youth can bring to this area?
Okay, of course. First, as one thing, this covers like 16%, I think, of global population. So of course, the labor supply from the young people is a major contribution what we made. And of course, our intelligence, creativity, and innovations. But I also want to highlight here is that the young people also heritage the wisdom and the culture of agricultural practice. Because in some regions, there are already some local farming systems that are already sustainable, the already climate resilience. No one is inherited this kind of practice as rural aging, rural holding is a really terrible situation in China. And I believe this kind of situation is similar around the world. So what I think is important for young people is inherited this kind of sustainable practice and pass on, so we can make a more climate resilient agricultural system.
So in the case of Davao de Oro, Philippines, where our project is located, the youth and women are not currently involved in the project, and they are not deeply immersed in the agroforestry practices of cacao. But our project team actually found that the children of the farmers help when it comes to e-commerce or the promotion of their cacao products after it's been processed and harvested. That's why I really think that the youth has a key role in agroforestry, especially when it comes to the digitalization of and promotion of agroforestry products. both in the Philippines and of course in other countries as well.
Great. This question is for Matthew. What are some common challenges faced by youth initiatives in agroforestry, and how can diverse stakeholders collaboratively work together on overcoming these challenges?
Okay, thank you. Thank you once again. Challenges facing youth-led organizations or youth-led initiatives in my country. One of them has to do with accessibility to land. Our part of the world is getting access to land to even go into farming or go into initiatives like agroforestry is a challenge. And then mostly you have to pay. You have to pay a lot of money. And as a young person who is coming up, you have the good initiative, you want to go into agroforestry, you don't have the capital to start, you don't have the resources to start. And so you get activated. Even when you go to the financial institutions to seek for funding to start such a project, they don't you hardly get it because they don't usually invest in things like that because they think that because of the changes in weather or the climate change, you might not be able to pay back when they give you that funding. And so that is one of the challenge. Apart from that, we also have the challenge of accessibility to market. If you are able to try as much as you can to get the land, you are able to do your agroforestry project, and then the next thing you are thinking about is how do you make money out of this? How are you able to ensure that at least what you are doing it's profitable? Who is going to buy? Who are going to sell to? So that has also been the challenge. We don't have the market ready to us. All we do is that growing our food crops or having our initiatives. The next market to us is a local market, and the local market, most of them are farmers, most of them are into this thing. And so if you have something like that, it's difficult for them to prioritize because everyone has a small farm somewhere that they are able to grow. But then if you are able to get access to maybe international market or export or something, I think that would be a very good way to start from. Apart from that, also addressing the issue of land access is that sometimes we have to build creatives or partnerships. So when we are able to do that, we are able to get a land from the chiefs because over there, the chiefs who are in charge of the land and all that, and they have to give it out to you. And as young people too, I also think that the government has a role to play because agriculture or agroforestry is not kind of interest to we the youth over there. It's not attractive to us. So I think that our government should make it more attractive. And then the fact that it's also rain fed, and then we need more irrigation and then more smart agriculture activities to be able to do some of these agroforestry projects.
Okay. And from this discussion on challenges, and we've already started to identify some of the solutions, this question's for Thomas and Belle. What initiatives or programs are needed to enhance the capacity of youth to effectively engage in and contribute to agroforestry projects?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Yeah, what I referred to earlier is that there is not a lot of capacity in the Netherlands around this in temperate regions. It's a novel subject. Well, I believe strongly that it can be very important. As I said, doubling the soil organic carbon content, multiple biodiversity positive impacts it have, but also the can produce way more food on the same hectare via agroforestry. So building that into current education systems, we should make sure that courses given across the globe, but also in regions that don't have agroforestry that central yet, to incorporate it in those programs. And a good example was the one of Amsterdam, where students themselves took the initiative to create a course on agroforestry. So yeah, also an open invitation to other youth here. If you think that is lacking from your program, I'm happy to connect you with them to see how to incorporate that in programs globally. Also, things like massive open online courses can be a good way to to get more capacity on it. But also, referring to Matthew, I also see institutional barriers there, and so also lobbying in places like this to make sure it's really recognized as a valid form of production, and it can be. It doesn't have to be a true forest as shown at the picture, but it can also be incorporating more trees. Also, often looking back how production was in the past. If I look at the Netherlands, we used to have a lot of trees alongside all the agricultural fields because that was the border, but also of the field, but because of the increase of production, upscaling, that was all lost. But it also had very positive effects on, for example, breaking the wind. And so bringing those things back in can be via policy, but also bottom up by youth via creating courses, capacity will be a good way.
Just to give context to the challenges that the youth face in Philippines or in Davao de Oro specifically, I agree with Matthew that most young people are not actually interested in forestry or agroforestry. We found that it was actually the farmers that don't want their children to be involved in agroforestry practices because they want them to study instead in university. So, in order for us to be able to fully engage the youth in agroforestry practices, I agree that we should implement capacity building opportunities for them to actually immerse themselves in what the benefits are for agroforestry and how beneficial this will be for their livelihoods. And then capacity building opportunities can be for how to do sustainable harvesting and even up to how they can be involved in the supply chain for cacao. And aside from that, in SFITL project, we are actually creating curriculum modules on cacao related topics such as cacao agribusiness and entrepreneurship. And we are partnering with the Philippine Cacao Industry Council to integrate these modules into the integrated cacao module for not only in Davao de Oro, but the entire Philippines for cacao production. Um, and then our project team is also establishing many learning farms in Davao de Oro. If I'm not mistaken, we are going to establish 5 learning farms for cacao adopters and non-adapters to learn about agroecological practices and how to plant, how to keep them from pests and diseases, practices like this. And then in those learning farms, you can actually send the farmers' children to uh, give them an on-ground experience on how these agroforestry practices are actually done in person.
Okay, great. So building on this conversation around the solution space, as students and young professionals, what are the pathways towards strengthening climate resilient outcomes in agroforestry? And we're going to start with Violet.
Yeah. What are the outcomes towards strengthening climate resilient
outcomes in agroforestry, as well as what can we learn from traditional agroforestry practices?
Sure. Okay, I'll speak to the second part first. I think we can learn so much from traditional agroforestry practices. I think like we've heard that every speaker in their own way has like talked about how many of these agroforestry practices are rooted in indigenous knowledge, indigenous practices. And I think oftentimes like so much of our new farming practices we consider like especially the global north like these new or innovative practices when in fact like they're very much not new or innovative in any way. I mean they're changing and growing but they're based on indigenous knowledge systems, indigenous practices. And so very much what I was doing in my work was trying to learn from these older pastoralists, these farmers who had been in there generation after generation, and learning from their deep knowledge, and especially around trees, there was so much knowledge that was being lost. there's so many trees that are native to Rwanda that have really unique purposes, whether it's for making the traditional milking pails, whether it's for making coffins, whether it's for there's so much that serves as a really good diverse food for the cows. They're not just eating like one type of monoculture grass, which is what is happening currently in many parts of the world and in Rwanda. And so just trying to get down, what I noticed is that a lot of these older farmers who are 70 plus have so much knowledge. And when I was interviewing their children who are starting to take over their pastures, they knew way less about trees and they had way less of a sense of importance of why trees are important to have on your pasture with cows. And so it's so important to document, to learn, to talk about these practices, and then also to put in place systems where pastoralist farmers can really transition this knowledge down to down to the youth, so that they can continue, because it's really through this like love and knowledge and understanding of why trees are important on pasture and what types of trees and what are their uses and how can you protect them well. This type of knowledge is vital to successful agroforestry systems, and it's vital to protect it and then sit down as well.
Okay, and like again, like bringing the conversation back to this higher level of COP and the importance of climate action. The next question's for Matthew. From your perspective, how does agroforestry support a landscape approach to climate action?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the question. I think that agroforestry initiative supports the landscape in a sense that, there are certain crops or certain things that because of the climate change, they need to be together with other species and all that. So if you don't practice agroforestry and you limit it to a particular tree, you might not know how it will be affected. So you have to be able to, maybe, for example, if you in part of the country, if you are doing farming and you clear the land and you are farming, you have to plant banana, you have to plant plantain, you have to plant cassava, all of them on the same land, and then you plant cocoa at the same time. And so once you do this, and then they are all growing up, they are able to pull each other along. But then if you just plant just one thing, it will end up dying off because of the weather and the climate conditions that interplace over there. And so I think that agroforestry plays a very critical role when it comes to acting on climate and then making sure that we have a stable landscape for agroforestry initiatives in that part of the country.
Great. And building on this conversation, this question's for Sean. Stepping a bit back from the term agroforestry, which hasn't been discussed very much in this space of the food pavilions this week, given your focus on agriculture, like more focus on agriculture, do you please share some of the advantage you see in integrating agroforestry and collaborating more in the agroforestry space?
Yeah, from the agriculture perspective, sorry, we're only focused on agriculture, but we also think agroforestry is a good solution or good practice to striking the balance between like producing food and also help to build a good landscape. So actually, White Part Kenya has a project to how people can use their trees beyond the firewood to make their tree stand their function as more like ecological perspective. So we realize this connection between agriculture and forestry, and we think it's a good way to. It's a key solution to keep a good agroecology, but as our panelists mentioned before, the financial support is a main problem we are facing right now. But beside, we need sufficient financial support. The usage of finance is also important. We should training the farmers, like give them a financial literacy on how to manage their money to maximize the benefit of what we have, so we can make of it. Yeah.
So we're in the last few minutes of this session, and I just wanted to open it up to the floor. Do we have any questions from our audience?
All right, thank you. And just so everyone knows, Mick Stevens, I'm from Australia. I'm on the board of Forestry Australia, which is the peak forestry body. Also been involved with a lot of research that we're doing with AFPA and what we do with Timber Queensland as a state body. So I guess what I'm saying from an Australian perspective, everything you've said, we fully agree with. You know, we really realise there's potential here with agroforestry, all the issues you guys have raised. And to congratulate you all as young agroforesters out there pushing the boundary, because we know we have policy boundaries, information and R&D boundaries. So I think you touched on it. You know, what are the barriers for young people to come in and embrace agroforestry? Because I think it's really the youth. We're going back to these complex kind of systems. You know, I know you've touched on it, but have there been some barriers institutionally or organisationally? Like you've got the Forestry Students Association, there's International Union of Agroforestry. You know, I really think we want to be able to bring youth into those bodies and do a lot more. And we're finding in Forestry Australia, we're bringing a lot more young foresters. They're interested in this area. So just a big congratulations. But if there's some simple things we can be doing, I guess, across those organisations, yeah, some thoughts about that would be useful.
Okay.
So thank you for the comments and questions. Actually, IFSA is a new partner of the Australian Forest Products Association, and we talked with some of their people from AFPA that we're going to partner up to provide internship and job opportunities for youth in Australia and even international forestry students to work in Australia and actually have on-ground experiences of Australian forestry practices. But answering from the perspective of our project, like I mentioned earlier, young people are not really interested, but a few of them, they're not interested in practicing agroforestry for livelihood, but some of them help their farmer parents or their farmer families to promote the products. And I think that this is good, but is not enough to actually immerse them into agroforestry. So going back to our suggestions of providing them capacity building opportunities and for them to have job or internship opportunities um, in agroforestry so that they have on-ground experiences and apply what they learn into their own local farms.
Or do you want to? Yeah, I can. So I think I have two answers. Like one, like in the Australian context, which I maybe is more with the school of the environment context. I think I agree. Like agroforestry is a budding topic. People are excited about it, but there's not a lot of resources there right now. And so I think getting people really excited about like the incredible things you can do with when you combine all these um, different systems into one. And I think for me, at least, what excites me is that it's a bit complicated. And this is like a double-edged sword. Like one, it's a bit complicated, which means that it can be a bit scary for farmers to go into because it takes a little bit more work. It takes more planning, and then it can take some more funding. But for students, it's also more complicated. So it's like it's very exciting. It's like all the possible combinations that are still being figured out. It's a really fun, exciting area to go into because it's like, okay, we want to go cocoa. What are the things that grow well under cocoa? I mean, that's been really studied at this point, but like there's so many other tree crops. Like in the US, they're really looking at so many different types of tree crops and what can you grow with that? Or like with alley cropping is another area I've studied in the US. Like what can you grow in the alleys between trees? Like there's so much, such a space right now. So for students, it's just really, I think, can be exciting, a complicated nature. And then just part two, I think I really agree with what other panelists were saying earlier about like if you want to get youth into agroforestry, the barrier I think is just the business case. Like I think you really you need to make a strong business case for other farmers. And that's really what it ends up being, is like having successful farms that are implementing agroforestry, and then having other farmers go and visit that successful farm and learn from that successful farmer. And that the barrier for youth is that there's just not that many farms right now that are doing that. And so the more like demonstration farms, the Yale School of the Environment has a program called LT, where they silvopasture, they have one of the main core tenets is like demonstration farms, farmers learning from farmers. And I think it's like a huge barrier. We just don't have business case in farming terms, like economically laid out. And so if youth don't see that, then they're not going to be excited about it.
Yeah, I've doesn't have a chapter in Australia. So if you are in touch with any agricultural students, they're happy to collaborate. Rather, from my experience, what I see is that there is a huge interest in agroforestry from agricultural students per se. But yeah, the problem is often that there is no institution willing to collaborate, or teachers are a bit wary of the topic. I've seen myself, I tried to publish my results. Now National Geographic was very interested and was able to publish it via National Geographic, but like other conventional platforms, agricultural papers, etc., why this study about agroforestry in the temperate regions, they were a bit hesitant. So I think we can be a good force to bring agroforestry on the agenda. We are knocking on a lot of doors of institutions, and hope that there are also people there, welcoming those voices. And I'm happy to see that there's already a collaboration with IFSA going on. Interested in working on that too.
It's just occurred to me that, a new word I have learned today, actually, there is a very popular concept in China we call underforest economy. Actually, I do a bit of concept of the underforestry economy. It means that make full use of forestry land resources and tree-lined advantage by planting and breeding. I think this is quite similar with agroforestry. Maybe this name is more appealing to young people, to maybe let them attract them to join this sector. This is what
Just like to echo, oftentimes we have these institutional divisions between agencies of agriculture and agencies of forestry, and that's replicated in our education institutions as well, at least my experience. But it's, I think, really great that we have this collaboration between the forestry students, the agricultural students, the young professionals working on the landscape, begin a stronger dialogue in this space. We have time for one more question from the audience, if there's one. Okay, we're good. This is the end. Thank you so much to our panelists who did an amazing job sharing their story.